Hello everybody, my name is Anar. This is Boost Career Today, our second episode. Today I'm interviewing the guy who works as a software development engineer at Amazon. He is also originally from Azerbaijan, same country as me. He came here as an immigrant to pursue his career in software development and landed his dream job at Amazon, where he now works for the past 2 years. This is going to be very, very interesting. Grab your coffee, get comfortable. I'm confident you want to enjoy this. Let's do it, everybody. Emil, thanks for coming, brother. I appreciate having you here. This is our second episode of Build Career Today. I think there's no better way of starting this by you going ahead and introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself.
For sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Emil. I'm currently software development engineer working for Amazon Web Services.
So, Emil, I think ideally I would like to start talking about, we're both from Azerbaijan, right? And but I think every immigrant story is a little bit different. So I would like you to describe just your journey of coming to Canada and if you had any difficulties with moving here. We'll move to the Amazon side. I think there's a lot of people who want to learn about Amazon, but I think also the fact that you're an immigrant, I think will be very, very interesting for many followers right here.
I guess since it's been a long time, off the top of my head, I can say that obviously you start with applying for universities, and for me, and obviously you got to be limited in your application number because it's costly, things like that. But once you get admission, then it's just a matter of finishing up the documentations, application processes for visa and other things. And besides those, I think the first year that I moved into Canada, I did my bachelor's degree in Alberta, and it just happened to be one of the coldest years for the last decade. I think it's between minus 40, 50 degrees. I guess that combined with the fact that a little bit cultural shock, when you first move in, and I think, yeah, off the top of my head, those were the issues that I ran into.
It's great that you did mention the temperature, which is, you said minus 40, I think that's what you said. Minus 14 or minus 40, is that what you said?
40, minus 40, 50.
Oh, Jesus Christ, that's crazy. And I think many people from our region, they don't really understand what that means. So can you describe what minus 40 actually feels like? Because I know what minus 17 feels like. So I think many people don't realize how cold that really is.
I guess the way that I could describe it, I would go to a lab in the morning at 7 a.m. and I could feel as if the water in my eyelid gets frozen. And I would why I'm torturing myself? Should I just skip this lab altogether, stay in my cozy room? But I mean, then you kind of get used to it. And it's just, becomes like an ordinary thing.
And continuing with the topic of moving to Canada, was there anything that you wish you knew before you got here? Anything in particular that would help you at the beginning, at early stages?
I guess one thing could be I would have preferred to do a little bit more research and let's say do my bachelor's degree maybe in BC, let's say UBC, which has a beautiful campus, and it's because if you live in BC, the weather is beautiful. There are a lot of activities that it has to offer. Like you can do skiing, you can do sailing, within a short distances you can just travel. I guess that would be one thing. From education perspective, I didn't understand the significance of doing internships while you're studying, because it's just a huge bonus once you graduate for getting jobs.
Absolutely.
So that would be the other thing.
So talking about internships in your career as a software developer, I'd like to know specifically, how did you start your career? And maybe more importantly, the choice of becoming a software developer, because I don't know how it was in your family. In my family, it was like being Azerbaijani, it was like a big problem, me being a software developer, because my mom wanted me to be a doctor, my dad wanted me to be a lawyer. So it was definitely a culture shock for my parents. What was that like for you? Did you have anyone in family doing that, or how was that choice made?
That's actually interesting that you mentioned, because my father is also a doctor, but he actually never forced. I think part of him wanted us to be a doctor, at least me or my brother, but he never forced us. But going back to your previous question, I think from the family perspective, education was really important from the early age for us, for my dad, and then he kind of forced me to go one step ahead and like get better at math, specifically focus on that area. And I would usually not just study the current level of curriculum, but also 1 year ahead. And ultimately I ended up actually participating at international mathematical Olympiads representing my country many times. So having that like good, strong foundation in math, I wanted to kind of leverage that going into the future, that like I already have that foundation and how I can combine it. I didn't necessarily want to pursue mathematics, but I thought that like, engineering, computer engineering, software development, it's a field that's just, has a high demand, and it's just as technology improves, there's going to be more opportunities. So those were the two factors that kind of, lead me to go after this path.
And it's actually great that you mentioned maths, and I know I've seen that you participated in Olympics as well in maths and represented Azerbaijan, so that's really awesome. There are a lot of people asking and do ask to this day, like, how much math is necessary when you work as a developer? Do you feel like you have to use a lot of math on a daily basis? Do you feel like there's no way someone can become a developer without a strong mathematical foundation, or is it something they can take on as they go through the process of becoming one?
I see. Well, yeah, definitely. It doesn't mean that you have to be like super good at math to be a successful developer. Like not at all. Like, so people listening to this, like, don't get intimidated by that. I guess the only one particular area maybe that it could be helpful is that when you're preparing for interviews for big companies, such as Facebook, Google, Amazon, then usually the interview process involves a lot of algorithmic knowledge. So that's one area maybe that it could help you out. But overall, yeah, it's not a must. It's a bonus, I guess. But yeah.
You mentioned Amazon right now. You said they do ask algorithmic questions, and it's not just them. Google as well. All the big companies, they love that stuff. But specifically, tell me more about Amazon. You work there. I know you've been working there for a while. What it's like? Why Amazon? What it's like working there? What do you like about working in Amazon? Those kind of things.
I see. I guess there are a few other factors. One of them is the fact that with Amazon, I think, compared to other big companies, you get to show more ownership and work on projects that have more critical impact on customers. So from scope-wise, as a developer, you can get you can improve yourself from career perspective by working on like large-scale projects. The benefits, perks, those are the other factors. But yeah, that's I think.
And one of the reasons that you mentioned you can improve yourself a lot, and I know guys who like really want to get into Amazon because the progress that you get in there within a couple of years in terms of your resume and how much you can learn is fantastic. But the process is pretty hard, and I went through the process trying to get into Amazon, and I know how complicated it is. Not everyone can do it. Walk me through your process, and more not from perspective of what they're gonna ask, because most people I think have an idea of what is Amazon looking for, but more about your own preparation for Amazon, because I think that would be more interesting for people, because you clearly are a successful candidate. What was your preparation, and how was it, do you think, different to what some other people do?
Sure. So perhaps to quickly summarize for people who wants to go from the same path, essentially, as long as you have some sort of good understanding, good foundation of data structure, trees, graphs, things like that, these topics. If you don't have it, if you haven't taken it at university algorithmic courses, you'll just have to read it or watch videos on YouTube and learn it. And once you do that, the next step is obviously like solving lead code problems, which is one aspect of prepping for interviews. And I think one thing that would be useful, like a good habit to make, is that when you're, let's say, solving easy questions, there are like different difficulty levels. You got to make sure that like the first time you write code, it's compilable. You kind of consider all the edge cases before like clicking the submit button and getting like a bunch of errors and then fixing them and then rerunning and then seeing the tests are failing. Because as long as you force yourself to create that compilable code from the get-go, then in the long run, when you're actually in the real interview, then you're going to write a better code with considering all the edge cases, and then it's going to pay off. So I guess building that habit early on and making sure that you don't just blindly write it and then fix. You just write it cleanly from the get-go. Then
good habits, right?
Yeah.
Good
Because
habits.
essentially, maybe this also applies for like intermediate and like senior level positions more, and like for the entry level, maybe like it's not that super important, but it's still a good habit to make. Other than that, I would also look at the solutions and compare them with my solutions, just to see like time complexity, space complexity. If I could improve my solution further, I'd just like move on to the next one. So I had this online coding challenge. I passed it. I think there was 2 questions, and then the next step was a phone interview with an engineer on the team, and then it was like a live coding session, which I was also able to pass. And the last step was an on-site interview, because at the time it was like pre-COVID, so they would actually fly you in to that location. You would stay in a hotel for 3 days. They would reimburse everything, meals, hotel, which is, you could kind of observe the first level of, customer obsession. They would treat you as a customer, and they would make sure that you're getting well taken care of. And then as you go through the process, and so yeah, my on-site interview, I think it was either 5 or 6 hours, something like that, back to back. Just it's energy taking. At some point, you're like, oh, God, I just want this day to be over because it's so consuming. But yeah, that was how my journey was like.
But it must feel satisfying when you realize that you did pass, and you clearly passed. You were the guy that they chose to hire.
Absolutely, yeah. It just makes everything worth the effort, worth.
Wow. And I understand where they're coming from. They're trying to hire best of the best, right? And just like many of those big companies. Interesting that you did mention that it was pre-COVID times when you were applying, right? So the process was a little bit different. Now, COVID made many things difficult, right? I think there's way higher competition now for different positions. What kind of tips would you give to people to, especially, I would say, for probably entry positions, to stand out from competition? This can be a resume, a cover letter, maybe GitHub tips, anything. Because I think the first step for anyone is just to get that call for an interview or to get that call for a test. How can they stand out?
I would assume one thing is, obviously you got to improve yourself. Like, let's say you're studying, you're a student, it's always good to work on side projects, or whether you take extra courses from, like Stanford, Udemy, or just data points that shows that like you're interested in this field and you're constantly working on yourself to improve. Having a good LinkedIn profile, good social circle, those are also definitely a bonus, a plus. Because usually a lot of recruiters, they just use LinkedIn, to find candidates and approach them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They do. They totally do that.
And other than that, I guess just the interview itself. With Amazon, it's a little bit different because we also, like, the leadership principles are also important for the company. So you kind of demonstrate with examples in the past how like you've dealt with situations that align with those leadership principles. So if their choice of companies Amazon, they should also prep for that and prep for answers that align with those leadership principles. But in general, for entry-level position, I think as long as you have a good prep, solid prep, and you have like good university background, things like that, even without a university, like we sometimes have hires which like self-taught, they haven't had like computer engineering degree, but they succeed on the interview and then they get hired. Maybe for the intermediate, higher level positions, then you got to show more data points.
I mean, I think it was Elon Musk, right, with Tesla, that said that he would happily hire people with no undergrad degrees. So we definitely want to see that. I guess there's less of that happening with Tesla, actually, from what I heard. But it's exciting to hear that it is happening in Amazon. I want to ask you this, like when you get, because I think we all have ideas of what working in a certain company would be like. But when you actually do get hired, did anything surprise you about Amazon? And to give you an example, like I had a co-op in government in BC Ministry of Social Development, and I had an idea that typically people are older in government. Like I didn't realize how much that gap would be. Like when I actually started working there, probably the youngest person other than me was like 32 or 33, and I was like 19. So that was surprising to me about working in government. What was surprising about working in Amazon?
The most surprising thing maybe one of the things would be like customer obsession. Like when you look at the leadership principles, you see that like these are customer obsession, thinking big, things like this. And sometimes maybe it might sound like, cliche or things that, okay, yeah, it's just some buzzwords. But when you actually work within the company, you see that these leadership principles are like applied during, let's say, all kind of phases where it's like design or when you're like, and also there's like the customer obsession is really a thing. Like when you're designing products, when you're doing things, you always go extra mile, make sure that, okay, this is like the effective but most affordable way to design this thing so that it's cheaper for customers, so it could drove the customer adoption. So the amount of obsession around customer service, like that's something that I imagine that like it is there, but I didn't think that it's to this degree that they have.
So it's just next level. Like you get there,
Next
you
level,
realize like this guy's big on this. And honestly, I'm not surprised, because if you think about how many customers Amazon has at this point, how many orders daily, like that's just huge.
right.
So they have to. The company wouldn't be as big if it wasn't. You being a developer, I think we would also have among our audience, probably most people would be developers watching that. And I think something that developers want to know more about is types of, and I know Amazon is so big that I think most developers will be working with different things. But can you mention just some of the technologies that you work with, so that somebody who's watching this will be like, okay, I can work on this, I can improve this particular technologies, and this would look really good on my resume when I'm applying to Amazon or any other big company.
Um, so obviously it's kind of different from team to team, what kind of architecture they have built upon, or like what kind of new features that they are building. For me personally, I get a chance to get exposed to many like AWS services,
Mhm.
and to name a few,
That's
like,
big right now.
yeah, Kinesis Firehose, which is like a data batching, and you send it to a destination, which could be, let's say, S3. And there is SNS, SQS, Lambda, Fargate, which are like compute services. I've had a chance to get exposed to step functions, API gateway, DynamoDB. So as you can see, it's just a vast majority of
Huge
AWS
number, right?
services. Yeah. Glue off the top of my head, and then like CloudFormation, which is a service that you use to like design infrastructure as a code, write like templates, and then replicate your infrastructure across many different regions. So overall, as you get exposed to these services, you kind of get a good understanding of how to leverage them, how to connect them together, and
Mhm.
design bigger components, as well as like the trade-offs between different services which are in similar what they do, but with different capabilities. And essentially that plus how they bill, because that's also another important factor. So these are the technologies that I've used, to name a few, over the past 2 years.
And if we think about it, you have only been there 2 years, and
Yeah.
that's pretty long list of technologies that you got your hands on. And I'm sure that's not everything. I'm sure there's way more to come.
Yeah.
Emil, any final words for, I guess, for those of us, because we will have a lot of people watching from overseas, and there are a lot of Azerbaijanis who got very, very excited about you talking about your experience in Amazon. There's a lot of Azerbaijani, we have a lot of talented people who want to also come here, also work for big companies. And from neighboring neighbors as well, like Russia, Turkey, etc. They might be watching this. Any final words for those of us who want to move to Canada and just land that dream job? Like any tips, anything in general? You can say anything what you feel.
Sure. I think first and foremost, it's a goal that's like reachable, so they shouldn't be intimidated by it. It's definitely achievable goal. For me personally, the way that I came in, as I mentioned, I studied here, then I got work permit, got PR. That's one way to follow. The other way would be obviously these big companies. They also have some positions for like international transfer. Like recently, we hired some people from Ukraine, for instance, developer that she moved to Canada. So these are the like ways that off the top of my head they could easily move to Canada and get their job. And as far as the preparation, it's just having good understanding, good fundamentals of data structures, algorithms, and then solving a lot of questions on lead code. And maybe Grokin is another website that has like good system design questions, things like that. And that's about it. Just prepping, adding more value to yourself every day, and then eventually they will succeed.
That's fantastic. I'm sure they're going to love that. And lead code is really important do that. I should have done more lead code when I was applying to Amazon. Emil, it was a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you very much. This will be posted on multiple platforms, Instagram, YouTube. We're probably going to add some of your contact details, whatever you're going to give us, so that people can reach out and ask questions if you want. And yeah, make sure you like this, make sure you follow this. There will be more content like this. Thank you very much, Emil. It was an honor and pleasure to have you here.